What's happening in Canada's Arctic? Navalik can tell you. She's lived there her whole life.
There was scheduled this past summer 13 cruise ships. We used to only have one, like one icebreaker, like, say, the Coast Guard.
The Arctic is changing. More people are coming all the time. And not just on cruise ships. Hi, I'm Paul Haberstrood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. More ships are in the Northwest Passage every year. Global mining companies are circling the Arctic's critical minerals. Ottawa is planning to spend billions there. But the North has heard this kind of big talk before. So is anything different this time around? Also on the show, the look du jour is dewy skin. Getting that glossy look could take a 12-step regimen. Step 1, wait 45 minutes to get into the new Asian beauty shop that just opened in a mall near you. Up first, if you put in the time to comb through racks of clothes, thrifting is a reliable way to make some sweet finds. Or at least it was. So, Danielle Nerman, I know you love a good bargain.
Oh, do I ever? I never pay full price for anything. I think you know this. I mean, I did just buy light bulbs off Facebook Marketplace.
Did they work?
They did. I don't know how long they'll last, but I don't care because I didn't pay retail. And I buy a lot of stuff secondhand, and I'm not the only one. A recent survey says nearly half of Gen Zs buy something used more than once a month.
That's the youth. They love thrifting.
They love it. And Amy Clark, she used to be just like them. She started thrifting when she was a teen in the early 2000s.
Back in the day, I could browse, like sort of look at the rack at a glance and find a gem.
Thrifting was a gold mine. Lots of vintage and designer clothes. Once, Amy scored a Marc Jacobs dress for $20.
I could find interesting pieces that were made of good quality fabrics and cottons and wool and all that kind of stuff. So they seem to have like life still in them.
But Amy says the good old days of thrifting are over. And she's quit.
Well, why'd she do that?
Well, it's just really hard to find the good stuff. Instead, she's seeing a lot of clothes made from polyester and Lycra, cheaper brands like Shein and Old Navy.
So I do feel like thrift stores are where fast fashion goes to die, in the way that half of these clothes should have been thrown in the garbage.
And you'll hear this from a lot of thrifters. They rant about it on TikTok. They're going into the Goodwill, filming themselves, showing what they're seeing, and just saying they're coming out empty-handed.
Well, then what's different now?
Resellers. These are people whose job it is to thrift, and they go all the time. And they cherry-pick the best stuff off the racks and then resell it online for a profit.
And you don't have to be a pro to resell stuff online. I mean, that's easy to do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's eBay and Poshmark. You could list your wool coat that maybe never fit you, right?
Well, yeah, and you could get some money for it and then put it towards your next coat.
Exactly, because you may not want to donate a $400 jacket, but you may be okay donating a bunch of inexpensive T-shirts. I talked to Adam Minter about this. He's an American journalist who's written 2 books on recycling and the secondhand economy.
If you talk to anybody at a thrift store, they will tell you there's far more cheap clothing coming in than ever before. And there still is the good stuff. There is still good brands to be found. It's just less of it relative to the amount of lower quality stuff that's there.
And basically, we're donating what we're wearing.
Yeah, fast fashion is what's in fashion.
In North America, people are accumulating more stuff than they ever have at any time in history, more than any civilization in history. And they look at these thrift stores as part of their waste disposal options.
Well, yeah, I mean, how would you feel just like throwing a t-shirt out? You could be like, hey, someone could wear this.
Exactly. And because so much clothing is being donated, we now have this huge ecosystem of stores and warehouses and donation centers to deal with it all. And it's only getting bigger. In Canada, Goodwill is expanding. Value Village has opened 40 new stores in the last decade. And the volume of stuff that comes in?
It's literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds that are flowing through our system. It's remarkable, the sheer size and scope of it.
That's Jabron Tanius. He's the president and COO of Value Village. Jabron oversees all the stores in Canada and the US, and he gave me a tour of the company's processing center in Calgary.
That looks like something I donated. I used to have that wicker basket.
We get a lot of wicker baskets.
That may have actually been my wicker basket. It was identical. I dropped mine off at one of those bins in a strip mall for Diabetes Canada. Nonprofits and charities, they sell the donations they collect to Value Village, and all that stuff ends up here. It's like a Costco warehouse. There's forklift operators driving around, picking up gigantic crates filled with clothes. Everything gets dumped onto a conveyor belt and travels to like this sorting station where workers weed out the unsellable items.
There's stuffed animals, there's shoes that are being removed, there's bed and bath. It's kind of like a filtration process.
If it's good enough to be sold, it gets priced and shipped to the stores.
Well, what about prices? Because if there's so much stuff being donated, does that mean, prices are cheaper?
No. They have increased prices, but Jabron says modest increases. Still, a lot of people aren't happy about that.
I noticed that I can go to H&M and get a t-shirt for cheaper than if I go thrifting. Like, there's a huge inflation in the thrift, and I don't get it.
This Calvin Klein jacket is so cute. I like the wash, the distressing. How's that price?
I mean, she's not happy with the prices.
No. So I asked Jabron what he thinks of that criticism. Like, what's up with that?
Listen, Danielle, you and I could go into any one of our stores right now, dig through some racks or some shelves, and we would find something that is mispriced. Guarantee we could do that. We make mistakes. We do. It happens. And in fact, I would tell you, it happens in both directions because there are plenty of times where we dramatically underprice something really great that should have been priced a lot more. And that's okay. That's totally fine because that's just a great find for the shopper. It's part of the treasure hunt. You're not going to get the complaints on those.
Now, you find that like vintage Led Zeppelin tee, you're not complaining.
No, that would be amazing, though. But if you step back, and you look at who thrift stores are for, it's not just for people looking for deals on designer labels. Jabron says the vast majority of items at Value Village are still under $10. A big family can fill up their cart with winter clothes, and even if a jacket is only $5 cheaper than buying new from Joe Fresh, Adam Minter says for a lot of people, there's value in that.
The thrift store has always served various demographics. It's always had different price points. And, say a cheap Shein blouse is going to make its way to Goodwill, and it is going to be priced really cheap. It will still be cheaper than a new one. So the consumer who's looking for that Shein and who may decide they don't want to spend on that new one, they still will have the option to get a cheaper version of it.
So a lot of these clothes, they are finding a good home.
They are. But, if you're a treasure hunter, the golden age of thrifting may be over.
Well, you're a bargain hunter. Does that hurt your little bargain hunting heart?
It hurts it a little bit, yeah. But lately, I've actually changed the way I hit up these thrift stores. I'm not looking at the clothing racks anymore. I walk straight past them and I head to houseware. Because, Paul, I love Christmas ornaments. I got 20 for $4.
Okay, cool, but you're Jewish.
Meh, I still like to decorate.
Okay. Thanks, Danielle.
You're welcome.
On your radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Habersrud. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. A cosmetics exec probably said that. The beauty industry now does more than $500 billion in global sales. And these days, more of that business sounds like this.
I've recently been getting into Korean skincare lately, and I understand the hype. So I'm going to show you guys my top Korean skincare product.
She's talking about K-beauty, but there's also J-beauty from Japan, C-beauty from China. Asian skincare is now a whole thing. And our producer Ellis Cho finds it is coming for the world's beauty business.
Inna Nikki and her daughter Nicole have been waiting for more than an hour in this Calgary mall, along with more than 150 others.
I'm really excited to the store to be open here in Calgary. Jumping yesterday on the couch from the excitement. So like, I can't sleep, I can't go to sleep. I want to be here first time in the morning, but yeah.
They're here for the grand opening of a Canadian store called Kyoki and. It's all about Asian beauty. Everything from collagen face masks and rice toners to glue-free eyelashes.
You cannot find it anywhere in North America.
Echo Peng is the founder and owner of Kyoki and.
So this is a big trend in Asia right now. So you just use the tweezer and then put it on your eye. That's it.
She opened her first store 2 years ago in Ontario. Now she's opening her 12th in Alberta.
My goal is become a Asian Sephora. Yeah. Bring the Asian culture to North America.
It's sort of already here. Sephora and Shoppers Drug Mart sell a few Asian beauty brands. H Mart and TNT have them too. But Doug Stevens says there's room for something like Kyoki and.
Because there's really nowhere else I can think of in this country, and especially with the large Asian population we have in Canada. There's really no one who is out there exclusively serving that population.
Doug is a retail analyst in Toronto. He says Asian beauty is making its mark around the world.
I can tell you that the Asian skincare phenomenon and the Asian beauty phenomenon is significant enough to give European and North American incumbents in the beauty market very serious concerns.
In Canada, imports of Korean cosmetics went up more than 40% between 2021 and 2022. And big companies like Estee Lauder and Unilever are snapping up Asian brands. So where does all the hype come from?
You guys have heard me talk about this overnight Korean mask so many times.
Skincare that's actually worth your money from someone who is acne prone and has tried a lot of Korean skincare. These are all acne safe.
TikTok influencers shilling for Asian beauty brands get millions of views.
Plump, hydrated, glassy skin. Surf your new.
And some say it all started with the 10-step Korean skincare routine.
The first step is cleansing oil. Step 2 is a water-based cleanser. It can be foam, gel, whatever.
Asian skincare is all about taking time for you.
It's really about treating the skin as a part of the body that needs to be just as healthy. And so it really is about cleaning. It's about moisturizing. It's about protecting your skin from the sun.
Doug says it's also introduced new ingredients to a Western audience, like ginseng, bee venom, snail mucus.
And so you're taking ingredients that up until now might have seemed rather repulsive, but now there's sort of an excitement in the idea that this is an unusual ingredient that holds some sort of potentially magical power.
Its power? The promise of flawless glass skin. And that's something Ina Nikki and her daughter are willing to pay for.
Most people think this is my older sister, but this is my mom. She looks beautiful for her age. Yes.
So, how did you do?
Damage was done.
Damage was done, but it's worth it.
For the Cost of Living, I'm Ellis Cho.
On your radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Every so often, the Arctic finds itself front and center. Like, there's a dispute that goes back to a treaty signed in 1825 over who owns a little wedge of the Beaufort Sea. Canada and the U.S. just struck a joint task force to finally sort it out. At the same time, Ottawa is planning to spend more than $60 billion on a fleet of Arctic submarines. The mining world is again buzzing with the idea the North is the next resource frontier. The Arctic is no stranger to this kind of chatter. But this time around, will it be more than talk? Navalik has watched interest in the North ebb and flow. She's 68 and has lived there her whole life.
I'm born and raised up in Cambridge Bay in Nunavut. It's on an island and we're surrounded by the Arctic Ocean.
Cambridge Bay is the largest settlement on Victoria Island. It's on the Northwest Passage, which Navalik says looks a lot different now than when she was a girl. Instead of ice, she sees more open water for more of the year. Now, that's opening up parts of the north like never before.
There was scheduled this past summer 13 cruise ships. We used to only have one. Like one icebreaker, like say the Coast Guard. We used to only have that, and then we'd have one barge or two barges.
Navalik worked as a cultural advisor on one of those cruise ships, run by a German company. It's a job that didn't even exist not that long ago. After she boarded, they cruised up to Ellesmere Island.
Ellesmere Island is way up there. We took zodiacs from the ship to the land. You know, the tourists looked around and took pictures. So I was sitting beside a beautiful piece of ice on my little lawn chair and telling stories about the old RCMP and what they used to do in the old days.
So there she was. It was a beautiful day when she heard a horn blast from the cruise ship.
The horn only goes on when there's emergency, when there's polar bear. And I started looking around. I didn't see anything. And here's this polar bear coming in from the water. He was really quiet. And he started walking towards our iceberg. And everybody started screaming and yelling and hurrying. And I started running with my short little legs. When I reached the Zodiac, this great big German crew member, he helped me on board the Zodiac, but the polar bear just about reached me and my chair and the iceberg.
In 68 years, it's the closest she's ever been to a polar bear. She's pretty sure more run-ins like that are coming, and soon, because more people are heading to the north all the time. In the 1950s, the Arctic was on the front lines of the Cold War. In the 70s, big oil trekked there after billions of barrels were discovered in Alaska. In the early 2000s, commodity prices took off, rekindling the idea of a pipeline down the Mackenzie Valley. Each time, the excitement brought people and promises. Now, things are stirring again.
The hype does go in cycles, but of course it's what is it? What's the saying? History doesn't repeat, it rhymes, right? So it's a little different every time.
Arne Keeling is a professor at the School of Arctic Studies at Memorial University. This time, he says, the world is looking north for a bunch of reasons, and they're starting to collide. The Arctic is warming, up to 4 times faster than anywhere else on the planet. As it melts, it's becoming more accessible. More people want in, and not all of them are tourists. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has Ottawa talking about Arctic sovereignty and national security in a way it hasn't for decades. And then there's the energy transition. The Arctic has a lot of the critical minerals needed for EVs, batteries, and solar panels.
This cycle of Arctic talk, as all of those things have lined up together, again, governments, industries, and even Arctic peoples themselves have seen both the opportunities and maybe some of the concerns that are coming along with accelerating change in the Arctic region.
If we just look at mining, Canada's north to global companies is looking pretty sexy.
This is not only rare earths and lithium, et cetera, et cetera. It's also nickel, copper, cobalt. And then there's other commodities which, we've been mining in the north for 50 years, like iron. But of course, let's not fool ourselves. The mining industry is also interested in making a lot of money. Also riding the coattails of all this is good old gold and, of course, other minerals that may not be directly associated with electrification or critical minerals, but are, in a sense, going to be riding the wave, as it were, of all this government and industry interest in promoting mining.
So the resources are there, but the North has always been an unforgiving place to work. And that's not changing just because it's getting warmer.
Permafrost melting is actually a big problem for mining, right? Because you suddenly have to try and build your installations on literally shifting ground. An uncertain, changing, and rapidly changing environment creates uncertainties. And when you're investing billions in developing infrastructure, logistics to do extraction, probably you don't want that much uncertainty.
Now, how much mining the North wants, that's also a question. The industry's track record there is spotty. It's contaminated rivers, abandoned mines, left governments on the hook for environmental liabilities. Arne says support for mining runs the gamut from gung-ho to absolutely no, with many in the middle thinking,
if we're going to welcome mining on our territory, and that's an if, how can we do it in a way that works for us, works for what the objectives of Inuit are? So rather than just Bay Street investors and governments in Ottawa and elsewhere, Northerners are increasingly centering themselves, and Indigenous Northerners increasingly centering themselves in those discussions.
Regardless of how much mining happens, the Arctic is changing. More ships are in the Northwest Passage every year. And if the world is coming, Adam Lajeunesse says Canada needs to be ready. He's a professor of Arctic security at St. Francis Xavier University.
As activity increases, there's going to be security concerns. So when we talk about security, it's a big spectrum. On the one hand, you've got safety issues, which are very civilian. We're talking about search and rescue, communities that are now seeing more activity. Are they seeing trespassers? Are they seeing crime, drugs, and alcohol, and that sort of activity? But then, of course, you've got security, which is unauthorized transits. You've got illegal fishing. You've got idiots on sailboats that are moving into the Northwest Passage without permission.
Canada is also worried about old-school national defense. China has declared itself a near-Arctic state. Russia planted a ceremonial titanium flag on the seabed of the North Pole, literally trying to stake its claim there. Adam says this doesn't mean Russians are coming to physically steal our resources. But what if they wanted to, say, sail a nuclear submarine through the Northwest Passage?
You cannot sail an attack submarine in our waters. That's whether it's the Arctic or whether it is the Gulf of St. Lawrence or anywhere, you can't do that. A lot of these waters are uncharted. An accident would be cataclysmic. But also, we don't want them mapping or understanding or being familiar with or operating in Canadian waters, whether they're Arctic waters or whether they're waters off British Columbia or Newfoundland.
Arctic sovereignty is back on the radar in a big way. Canada's latest military plan is called Our North Strong and Free. It aims to spend $73 billion over 20 years, with the Arctic the big focus. We're building new icebreakers, patrol ships, maritime aircraft. But much of that spending is still in the future. It could happen. If it does, the people that live there could also get more of the infrastructure they need: roads, ports, telecom. Navalik, who had the run-in with the polar bear, has heard big talk about the North before. She's not sure if it will go quiet again, but she does know one thing.
When I'm flying in and out of Cambridge Bay, you see open water on the ocean, and it shouldn't be. It should be all frozen.
The North is opening up, and people are coming, whether Canada is ready or not. On next week's show, Jan Grajowski just ran into a problem. She wanted to cancel her newspaper subscription, but
I couldn't just do it online. I had to call them. And again, that it was another week or two before I got around to that. So then I called them, and their first response was, well, we'll give you a deal. It's 50% off now. And I go, well, no, thank you. And they go, oh, well, we'll give it to you even cheaper. And then it was like, no, I'm not reading it.
Ugh. The U.S. has brought in new rules to make it easier to get out of subscriptions, or at least as easy as it is to sign up. It's called Click to Cancel. Will it trickle over the border to Canada? That's next week. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Daniel Nerman, Ellis Cho, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Caroline Ferris. I'm Paul Habersrud. Thanks for listening.